Scott Summers, aka Cyclops from the X-Men, has always been a model superhero. He's always been the model superhero. Disciplined, loyal, and burdened by responsibility. But what if we ripped him out of that polished world of Marvel and the relationships with Professor X and all of the X-Men mutants in general and threw him headfirst into the chaotic, morally bankrupt nightmare that is the Boys universe? How would he do, and could he survive in a world where heroes are basically just corporate products and morality is 100% up for sale? But before I dive into this chaotic crossover, I want to firstly go into the background of Scott Summers. He is one of my favorite X-Men, and he is probably the premier leader of the X-Men, even if you're considering Charles Xavier or whatever. He is the X-Men that everybody probably would know. It is important to remember who he is just for this kind of scenario so I can kind of give you and you guys know the basic kind of character and personality that he has. And that is to say that Scott Summers has always been the ultimate soldier for Xavier's dream. A leader defined by control, restraint, and responsibility. His abilities and like his superpower, while most people would possibly that don't really know too much about comics would assume that they're just like laser blasts or laser vision, that's not even what it is. He has optic blasts, specifically that basically tie him into a world and another universe that is 100% just kinetic energy, which is exactly what he's expelling out of his eyes. Like these optic blasts aren't just his power, they're basically a metaphor for who he is. That kinetic energy, that kind of person that will keep things pushing and keep moving. He's not Captain America, but he can and quite literally do this all day. He is a man who believes in structure and accountability, but he's also spent most of his life being used by systems greater than himself. Xavier's mission, mutant politics, Krakoa's leadership, you name it, he's probably been there and done that. Cyclops isn't a man who craves control. He's a man who needs it to survive and who has been leading for so long, so well, that you kind of just assume that he's going to know what he's doing anyways. That's exactly why it makes him such an interesting candidate to be put into a universe like The Boys. But speaking of that, let's explain how he gets put into this world. Now, I could just be normal and be a kind of regular person and just say, oh, he's always been in The Boys universe, but this is the exact same Cyclops. But that really wouldn't make sense anyway, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to say that this crossover happens and he gets put into this world because obviously Marvel's not any stranger to having universes collide and mix in between each other, so that's not going to be a problem. But we could easily just say a mission goes wrong or somebody's X gene or whatever ends up causing him to just be transported into this universe at any given point in time. So Cyclops would wake up in New York, but it isn't his New York. There are no mutants here, no X-Men, just supes, violent, narcissistic gods worshipped by corporations. At first, he would try to figure out kind of what's going on. He's not a stranger to be dealing with other universes, as I've already said, so he's not going to be completely out of his depth and just be like confused and dazed and wondering what's going on. But he would actively try figuring out what's going on in this universe firstly. And that's when he would notice that the cracks would start appearing. People here don't want heroes, they want entertainment. First, even if he just tries to do the normal things that he does because he is still a hero at heart, if he tries to stop crime, Vought is 100% going to find a drone or just have a camera in place somewhere that spins it into a PR opportunity. And I see 100% the second that Vought finds him, their executives would be at his door trying to recruit him as the new face of moral clarity, or whatever brand that they want to instill onto him. And obviously this is where conflict would begin because Cyclops obviously would be not used to getting this kind of attention because usually X-Men and mutants are always kind of just annoyed and hated about existing in general in the Marvel Universe. They have a very weird relationship with everybody else. But here, people would actually be trying to, actively embrace him or whatever. And I say that with air quotes, just so you know. But Either way, he would refuse this kind of opportunity because he doesn't want fame. He wants to kind of just help people because that's exactly what he likes to do. But in a world without Xavier, without Jean, without his rival slash technical love interest, if you really want to go that way, Wolverine or whatever, without anybody that could believe in his exact same ideals, Scott would be on his own. And obviously, that isolation would eat at him as it would anybody else. Now, after spending a lot of time in this universe and kind of just figuring out exactly all of what's going on and getting any information that he genuinely needs, I'd see him eventually start kind of understanding that these heroes, the so-called seven, that he would eventually see and notice actively being the most popular heroes or whatever, he would notice that these aren't good people at all. These are more akin to not even anti-heroes if you're going to be honest. They're more akin to just basically villains. Like, they're not good people. They're not good guys. They might help and save people, but they're not doing it for like any reasons like trying to actively be heroes. So I see him honestly not even wanting to hunt them down, but if he ends up crossing paths with anybody like the Deep, A-Train, Maeve, or whatever, any person in the Seven or any other heroes, I don't see him getting along with anybody in this kind of situation in general. So whether it's A-Train, whether it's Homelander, or whatever, I see him most likely getting in confrontations. And for a good portion of the heroes there, like let's go with Translucent or whatever, I see him dealing with them fairly well, specifically any of the more regular heroes, just due to the fact, like more regular soups, just due to the fact that Cyclops is no stranger to dealing with extremely hard threats. He is no stranger to dealing with people that are a little above his class. He is very well trained, that is the good part. The training that Xavier has put him through, the hellscape, the training that they've done, has set him up and prepared him for dealing with a good portion of enemies. And his optic blasts, when they're actually used to their correct potential, are extremely devastating to go deal against. So I have a good high chance possibility in my mind that his optic blast and his kinetic blast are taking down a good portion of people, especially if he doesn't really want to have any nerfs on him at the exact moment in time. If he takes that visor off, people are cooked. And I mean, a good portion of people, specifically the more horrendous soups, will be getting killed without really any question, because Cyclops isn't like some of these other characters. Like if I put Batman into this, if I put Spider-Man into this, and Spider-Man's even more of an iffy one, but that no-kill rule doesn't apply here. He is completely 100% willing to do it if it needs to be done. And there are multiple examples of this, whether it is Professor X, who he has killed on an occasion, Donald Pierce, Jack Winters, Berserker, Apocalypse, Sinister, or whatever. There are examples of him actively killing. So I see a good possibility of him actually taking people down once and for all. And when it comes to somebody like Homelander, because he is the biggest annoyance and biggest threat that he would have to deal with, Homelander is firstly everything that Cyclops stands against. Unrestrained power with no discipline, no morality, and no empathy. The first time they meet, it's a fight. Like, it's not a fight, it's basically more of a test, if we're being honest, because Homelander would try to size him up, mocking his visor, calling him a Boy Scout with daddy issues or whatever, but Scott obviously is not going to bite. He's calm, he's measured, and he drives Homelander insane because for the first time, he meets somebody in this world that's not going to bend to him, somebody whose sense of control isn't fear but conviction, and somebody who's not going to be scared at him in the slightest because the people that Scott is dealing with on a normal basis can wipe the floor with somebody like Homelander without any problem. And I honestly see, firstly, Scott's going to be a little too fast for Homelander to be dealing with. And I don't mean like speed blitzing in a normal sense. I just mean he has very good reaction time, firstly. And secondly, the second that any optic blast hit Homelander, it will be game over because obviously this fight would be brutal. Homelander has that raw strength advantage, but Cyclops, firstly, is a tactician. He is the leader of the X-Men for a reason. Every move, every angle, every ricochet of his topic, like his optic blast, would be calculated. It's not about overpowering Homelander, it's about exposing his weaknesses and his ego. And that's where Cyclops would win. he probably would just have to kill him, but he could easily just do it not by killing him, but by outsmarting him. Homelander is a diabolical person, so that's why I see a good possibility of him having to just get gone and be vaporized by optic blasts. But he would also be able to do the opposite method of just making him doubt himself, because in the boys' world, psychological warfare basically is game and king. You will end a lot more battles with the quick method, but there is going to be that other method just to be readily available also. But I know some of you are also going to be wondering, what about the human element, and specifically Butcher and his crew? And I'm going to be honest, they'd hate him at first. Another soup trying to play the hero. But the moment Cyclops refuses to work with Vought, the dynamics would change. Butcher obviously wouldn't trust him, and I don't even think that Cyclops would really want to work with them, besides maybe Starlight, because he actually sees her as somebody that's actually trying to help. But Frenchie, somebody like that, he'd see something different. He'd recognize the soldier in Cyclops, the trauma buried by discipline and all of those things. But he'd truly kind of have a good, like Cyclops would actually have a good portion of the boys actually knowing that he's actually a good person. Would respect the fact that Cyclops has something that most soups don't: self-awareness and self-respect. Before long, Cyclops probably would become an unnecessary and not even unnecessary, but just an uneasy ally with a good portion of the boys group. And Butcher probably would be trying to do whatever he can to just antagonize, because he really just doesn't like soups in the first place. But good thing, even if he tries to use that soup killing virus, that's not going to work on somebody like Cyclops, just due to the fact that he's not soup. He is just a mutant. That's just his genetics and everything else like that. He'd help people, like he'd help the boys strategize, create operations, and even maybe help them expose parts of Vought's Compound V network or whatever. But obviously it's not going to be smooth sailing one little bit. They'd probably work together for a little bit, specifically with Huey, Starlight, and Frenchie maybe being the easiest parts of them to being able to work with. But his moral code would consistently clash with somebody like Butcher. And that entire ruthlessness that he has would not be something that Cyclops could even work with at all. So I see a good possibility that the rest of the boys group would have to separate themselves with Butcher and really decide what they want to be doing. Because Cyclops believes in the lines that shouldn't be crossed. Butcher doesn't have a single line at all. So we at least know that that would be the one big problem right there. And there is a very good option and possibility of that partnership being so tense that only one can live with it. And whether it's just basically them completely going separate ways and not working together at all, or possibly Butcher having to get got after, actively trying to murder a good too many people at one time or whatever, it would be a very interesting dilemma in the slightest way, and like in the biggest way, just due to that singular fact. Because I see that causing so many headaches and so many hiccups in every singular facet that you can't really ever expect them to work together in any shape or form. And then even when we have just talking about the entire corporate machine that is Vought, because I see no possibility where Cyclops doesn't just take the entirety of the organization down in whatever way that he possibly can. Vought International would see Cyclops as a PR goldmine on their end. They try to dig up any of his origins or whatever, but they wouldn't be able to find anything. He didn't exist until like about maybe a year, 2 years at most before this. And he would be trying to be like the poster child for them, because obviously Homelander has always been their big issue, but somebody like Cyclops, somebody that they might feel could be easily more controlled, maybe even see him as a spokesperson for controlled heroism, obviously. But Scott would reject it all. Vought would try pushing their narrative so hard and try taking the narrative. But that's what Vought wants to do best. They want to turn the narrative. And once he's not willing to play ball, suddenly he's a terrorist. The media paints him as an unstable, just egomaniac kind of person, and fake footage would show him attacking innocent people. It would cause more problems for anything else. It would be civil war all over again, but without any of that redemption. And that's when Cyclops would realize that, this is basically just a horror of a world. Power isn't whatever like he is used to, and it's a lot more corrupted by greed here. it is just pure greed. It's like not even corrupted, it's just pure greed. So he would have to kind of get rid of this organization just due to the fact that they're one's causing him annoyance and grievance, and two, the amounts of problems that they're causing in this world that he wouldn't really feel comfortable trying to lead them around. So hence why I would see him working with some of the boys group just for the sake of convenience and me just wanting to involve them in some way or another, because there is obviously the other option of them just not being able to work together at all and Cyclops kind of just doing everything solo, which is definitely an option also. But the real story here isn't about the fights or explosions, it's honestly about the ideals. Because Cyclops has always believed in leading by example, in protecting the weak, in earning the trust of others through sacrifice or through actual actions. But in the boys' universe, those values are completely going to be punished. He's targeted by supes, hunted by Vought, and distrusted by humans and any kind of other person along those lines. Eventually, he'd obviously start to question, does Cyclops break his code to survive, or does he hold dying onto it? Like, does he die holding onto it? Knowing Scott, like knowing somebody like his character and for how long I've admired and loved his character, he'd rather die a leader than live a hypocrite. His final moments would not be something grand or dramatic, they'd be quiet. A man standing against a system that's too corrupt to fix it. Maybe he's taking down Homelander, maybe he inspires somebody, Starlight perhaps, or whatever. Either way, a death in this world, which I don't see very much likely happening, because as people in the comments have always said, and anybody can ever tell you, the boys' universe, specifically Homelander for example, is just a big fish in a very small pond. And don't get me wrong, Scott Summers is not a big fish in his pond, but he is a very effective one. He is one that has been able to lead even the strongest mutants in the entirety of the MCU, like the entirety of the, not MCU, but like the entirety of the Marvel Comics universe or whatever. And he has kept them at bay, whether it's Storm, whether it's Iceman, whether it's whoever you could possibly think of that is these Omega level mutant kinds of people. They all respect Scott Summers. They all know that he is extremely dangerous and extremely capable of doing almost whatever he wants to do. So him dealing with people in this universe, I see it being very, very likely and honestly not going to be extremely hard for him to do. Because he obviously doesn't belong in this universe, but that's what makes this interesting kind of dilemma with this crossover and with this kind of what-if scenario. He is a man built for structure, thrown into chaos. A soldier of ideals trapped in a war with none. In a world where every hero is a villain, Cyclops would have to remain and remind us what a hero actually is. He would have to remain that hero. He would have to show us what that word means. He wouldn't save the world, but he would make it question itself. And for the question of whether he would survive, that's obviously a guaranteed, almost definitely yes, just due to the fact that even the biggest fish in this universe is something that Cyclops could deal with on any normal Tuesday afternoon in the Marvel universe. People with these specific sets of abilities and anything like that is something that he deals with fairly consistently, and whether it's a literal thing about, oh, these people are extremely strong for him or whatever, he deals with people like Apocalypse, he deals with people like Magneto. These are very strong mutants. But let's also talk about raw power and the fact of the question that's still going to be popping in people's minds of, could Cyclops actually stand up to these heavy hitters of the boys universe, quote unquote. And as I've already said, his optic blasts aren't simple lasers. They're just pure concussive energy, powerful enough to level tanks, cut through sentinels, and even dent adamantium under the right circumstances. And at its full strength, his blast can reach the equivalent of multiple tons of TNT in just kinetic force alone. The man is basically the human artillery cannon with surgical precision when he wants to have it. Against those lower soups like A-Train, The Deep, or even Black Noir, and I know he's technically supposed to be the person like that is basically equivalent to Homelander, but comparatively to people that he deals with on a normal basis in the Marvel Universe, Cyclops wins easily against all of these people. They're not even somebody that he would have to use and think tactically when dealing with people like this, because he's used to dealing with so many quick, strong people in general. And against people like Homelander, that's where it gets trickery, like a lot more trickier. Homelander's durability and flight give him an edge in raw power, but Cyclops' position would make it a very big, huge difference. Ricocheting blasts using reflective surfaces or whatever, it would turn the environment into a weapon. And remember, this is a guy who can literally blank off a beam of multiple walls and still hit a target dead on. Like, when you add in all the combat experience of decades of fighting against gods, mutants, and alien armies, he'd easily rank among the deadliest individuals in that universe, if not the deadliest by like times of almost near infinite numbers. Even Butcher with Tem V wouldn't be able to stand much of a chance unless he caught Scott off guard, and that's going to be highly unlikely. In short, Cyclops probably would not, honestly might end up being the strongest person in the boys universe if we're being completely fair. Maybe aside from Marie Moreau or Cypher, just due to the BS that they were doing in Gen V, and that's only just due to the fact of bloodbending is gonna be annoying, and being able to control somebody just by looking at them, that's can't really do much about that. So those would be the main big exceptions, but we're not going to be talking about them really much here. That's basically just all to say that Cyclops is extremely strong. I've already mentioned the fact that there is a very small pond in the boys universe with just a big fish or two that might be able to cause some issues anywhere outside of the boys universe, but not really by much, especially in somewhere like the Marvel universe with heavy hitters like the Hulk or whatever. But yeah, Cyclops would firstly, one, definitely survive in this universe, but if he was placed into this universe, it would cause a lot of chaos on the end of everybody but him, just due to the experience and the things that he's been through on his own end. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy this breakdown and this kind of what if scenario, make sure, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Maybe you guys want to support the channel out a little more, join the YouTube membership and get access to a couple of extra perks that I might have in there that you guys could look at and see. I might do a video actively explaining exactly what all those perks are, or actually start mentioning it a lot more in my other videos. But with all that said, this is Comic Rovii, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.